All right, welcome to Fretboard TV. This week's episode features special guest Kevin Ely from the Wooly Pig Farm Brewery in Fresno, Ohio, and our good friend Kevin Moreland here at Fretboard Brewing Company. I'd like to welcome both you gentlemen here today, and I am your host, Jim Klosterman, from Fretboard Brewing Company.
Jim.
Yes, yes. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'll cheers my Diet
Thanks,
Coke
Kevin, for
to you
coming
guys'
down.
beers.
Thanks for having me.
So we got two Kevs here today. It's going to be interesting talking to you both. So Kevin Ely, thanks for coming down and joining us. I know Kevin Moreland and Brad Plank were up in your area last week doing the collab.
It's true.
Okay, so that's true. All right.
Yes, I was there.
They disappeared for a day, so we didn't know where exactly they went. So that's good. They were with you. I'm sure everybody asked you how the brewery got started. So I just want to quick history on the Wooly Pig Farm Brewery, where you came from, and then why you opened up your own brewery in Fresno.
Excellent. I'm not much of a talker. I'll try to make it quick, but it's there's a lot of different facets, I suppose. So the brewery is on a farm that is located right next to the property, basically a property adjacent from where my wife grew up. So this is in Coshocton County. So this is basically I call the Appalachian foothills. So we are technically in Appalachia. So it's a very historic rural farming area, and it was just kind of those things like my wife and her siblings, they all graduated high school, all left, went to college, and it didn't seem like anyone was coming back. And then all of a sudden we basically they decided to come back. And I was actually my wife never thought she'd move back to Ohio after she left. And so I was pushing for it. I was a brewer.
I'm just going to interrupt you. Anyone who comes from Ohio will always move back to Ohio.
Well, and
I'm just kidding, but that's kind of what
Denver
it seems like.
was always east. Like that was as far east as I'd ever lived in my life, and beyond that, I didn't know hardly what existed in this world. So we ended up having an opportunity to buy this farm, and I was really a fan of the idea. And at the time, I was brewing at Uinta Brewing Company, spelled U-I-N-T-A, in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I'd brewed at a few other breweries. I'd brewed at Pyramid and at their production facility in Berkeley, in the early, it was like 2002. And prior to that, I'd studied biochemistry and brewing science at UC Davis. Did my brewing apprenticeship at Ska Brewing in Durango in 1998 when I was like 21. And there I actually lived in the brewery in the loft, and I was a raft guide, and I had a pager, and I would bounce back. So I was doing an academic internship, and then to make some money, they'd page me, and I'd go push rubber down the river for an hour or two on the Animas River in Durango, and then come back. It was pretty good, getting my feet wet, literally and figuratively, in brewing and stuff. But
how long did you brew for Uinta?
I was a brewmaster there for almost a decade. Okay. And while I was there, there were lots of changes and expansions. It was great. It was a great experience. I had lots of opportunity to go and learn and work with a lot of amazing people in the brewing industry, especially on the kind of brewery engineering and design side of things, and implementation of actually what you need to do to make and produce and sell beer. And so I would travel to Germany a lot for that.
Oh, cool. So from a scale perspective, how much were you brewing? How much were you guys brewing per year?
We were on the scale because we were doing about 100,000 barrels per year. We also had a significant portion, which I can say this now, it was food beer. So that was probably about 20% of what we were doing. So even though on the books it says 80,000, we were actually doing a lot more because we made a lot of beer.
Yeah, no, that's a ton of beer, and then you go from that to owning a farm and starting a brewery on the farm.
Yeah. Which
is probably going to be a lot smaller, but you obviously own a farm. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and when you started.
Yeah, and so on several of my trips to Germany, I would go oftentimes to a brewery exposition called the Braubeviale and in Nuremberg, and around that time, so it's the largest brewing exposition show in the world, and so you get to see all these, amazing colleagues, and I'm surprised we didn't run into each other there, but maybe we even did and didn't even realize it. But memories get foggy sometimes. But on one of those trips, booked a little extra time before the exposition and actually rode bicycles through an area called the Fränkische Schweiz, which means Franconian Switzerland, auf Deutsch in German. And so like, in doing so, I actually saw these woolly pigs. This was in early November. Actually, it was in November just like this, which unseasonably warm and sunny and all. Everyone was saying this is not how it is here, but it was pretty fantastic. And came back from that trip and was always kind of excited about what I saw there. But also, we were riding bicycles, literally just a few kilometers from brewery to brewery. It's the highest concentration of breweries anywhere in the world. In this small region, that's probably about the size of about 3 Ohio counties. There are about 100 breweries. And in the greater region, you have over 300 breweries in Oberfranken. And so it's just, and those histories, they're all a lot of breweries that are on farms historically, and maybe even still a little bit. And it's interesting, some of them you could even see the grain out system goes right through a wall, and on the other side of the wall are the pig barns, because that makes sense if you don't have to haul it forever to get somewhere. And so I really started to realize that this is a possibility. And it also looks a lot like our region in the Appalachian foothills in Ohio, because it's a mixture of kind of croplands, farmlands, and woodlands. And our county is literally split. It's about a third of each of those. But there were no breweries. And so I always felt that was kind of sad. And they even call our region, just a few miles north of us is Charm, Ohio. They call it Little Switzerland. So it looks the same in pictures. I could show photos from our farm in our region and pictures from Franconia. It looks the same. So there's kind of a geographic similarity. And I saw the pigs there and the beers. And so I'm brewing beers that are a lot from that region.
So did the pig idea come from your trip to Germany then? Or is that normally livestock that's raised where you're at?
Well, there is a lot of swine raised in our county, a lot. I have a neighbor, our next door neighbor, who we lease some of our farmland to for growing like cash crops and stuff, commodity crops. He raises thousands to several thousand hogs a year, but they're not the breed that we do. It's a different type of pig. Basically, all the pigs in the world over the last several decades and century have really streamlined into just a very few varieties and breeds. This breed, Mangalitsa, in the 1990s, there were fewer than 100 of them in the world. And they've slowly regained some traction, partly because they're considered like the Kobe beef or the Wagyu of the swine pork world, but they have to be raised at pasture, and that is not an easy thing to do.
Really? Why is that?
Financially.
Really?
Because
okay, financially.
You need so much land, and so it's not an efficient use of land necessarily, unless you really specialize in that. But
so I heard a little bit about your trip. Kevin, what do you think?
Well,
what do you think about the brewery?
Well, it's pretty awesome, but I think first and foremost, the history of what Kevin's been able to do in his brewing career and just being able to live out another dream. We started to run into each other, different events. We share the same love for some of the same beers. We've traveled to Germany in the same regions, so our conversations would be over some beers, wishing we were making some beers that we were talking about. So I'm like, eventually we were communicating and talking about his background and my background, and we actually found out we had mutual friends in Cincinnati, and it's all snowball, right? We are a small group in the craft beer community. When I reached out to Kevin, we were really trying to figure out, all right, what's the timing look like? Well, during COVID, everything's a little challenging. So I reached out, asked him how his business was doing, would he be interested in brewing a beer with us? And he was like, yeah, man, I'd love to. And long story short, he was like, oh man, if you're gonna brew the beer, I wanna brew the beer. So it was pretty cool. Me and Brad went up, brewed some beer on the farm, and I was just shocked from the very beginning. I really look back and say, once you go to these massive breweries and you work at them, you want to slow down, because you guys know me around here. I need to slow down. And
Kevin puts the gas pedal on those days.
Yeah, and I got to tell you,
Kevin Moreland, that is.
Well, my family might say the same thing. They're like, "Why are you doing this?" I'm like, we transitioned from our similar histories at bigger companies, bigger breweries, to building our own businesses and running our own breweries, literally at the same time.
Same time. So we got to talk about all these big things we got to do, and now what we're doing for ourselves. So it was personal. It was something that we really wanted to do. And I'm like, well, if we're doing a collaboration and I'm going up to your place, I really want to check it all out. So the first thing is like, we were all in, and it is brewing on a farm. 5-barrel brew house that Kevin got to design himself with some local manufacturers. It was cool to brew a traditional beer that you really can't get in Ohio, or I would say in the United States, with a guy that's also seen some of the history I have in Germany and Europe. So,
and we'll get to the beer here in
yeah.
a little bit, but through the grapevine, I heard that there's really no waste, or not very
there's
little.
Zero waste. There's always waste, right?
Yeah.
No. But the pigs are a big part of like basically our waste treatment for our, basically what I would say our bio waste or our organic waste.
Sure.
It's a very symbiotic relationship and an important part of what allows us to brew on the farm. Our only utility that comes onto the farm is electricity. So like I don't have natural gas, I don't have wastewater, I don't have water. So we're doing all that from the farm. And it creates its own challenges.
He does a lot, from carpentry work. I mean, the guy is doing a lot of things on the property besides just brewing beer.
Well, so run us through a typical day, if there is one.
Well, I mean, we're only producing 500 to 650 barrels of beer. It's a little bit more of a range now because of COVID and stuff, but a year. And so per week, we generally double batch of brew. So we're brewing once, maybe twice a week. And for every brew day, there tends to be kind of a transfer day and a clean day. So if I can, I'll go out. Right now we're building these little gazebo huts. They're basically glorified picnic tables that are fully enclosed. They're called stilettos, which is kind of a Bavarian or Austrian slang for these little protected seating areas. And otherwise, it might be hauling buckets of basically slop, which is some of our waste for the pigs and stuff. And and playing, family, we talked about playing frisbee. The family, whenever there's, good weather and good times, it's like we try to organize the whole family to go and play some games outside and spend some time outside. And so for us, the family we try to make it the most important thing because it is the most important thing, and it's easy to lose sight of that. But it's the thing with Kevin is that this is my first collaboration at Wooly Pig Farm Brewery, as far as with another brewery. I've done some stuff with some suppliers and stuff, but it's not a true collaboration. They basically let me do whatever I want. But with another brewery, you really have to talk about stuff. And Kevin and I, when he approached me about doing a collaboration, I was like, well, it's the first person I felt absolutely comfortable with. I know I'll be doing more collaborations with people in the future probably. The thing is, they are time consuming. I can't just do them like all the time, but I look forward to working with other local breweries in Ohio. But with Kevin here is that it really got me into doing the first one, which is always kind of the hardest, I think, because you've only done one recently as well.
Yeah,
your first one, and it's just that Kevin and I have very similar approaches to brewing beers, especially lager beers, and so I knew that we could trust each other in what we would do to make the beer that we wanted that would represent what both of us felt we would want to achieve in brewing a lager beer.
Well, let's talk about the name of the beer is OohAhh.
Yeah.
That's how it's pronounced, and it's Ungespundet Lager.
Yes.
Which is that real hardcore. It sounds hardcore German.
Yeah.
Just saying it.
So he can say it better than I can.
Kev Moreland.
Yeah.
So tell me how you guys decided on that, and a little bit about the beer.
It's a beer that takes me back to what I believe Cincinnati was in its day when the German immigrants came to our city and brought lager beer to the Queen City. Is when you go to Bamberg and you sit in these family-owned restaurant, hotel, brewery, everything is just like what he's doing now in Fresno. The whole family is involved in that business. Just to have this style of beer right off the bar and fresh as it possibly could be, it was just an experience for me that I've never been able to capture, and you really got to go there to capture it. So we've actually talked about the beer and this style before, and we know it's going to be something as an education here in the States and even in Ohio to talk about. That was a beer that I said I really wanted to brew, and I never have got the chance to brew it. And I was really a little afraid to brew it because it's going to take some marketing and a push behind it to get people to understand what it is. So when I pitched the idea to Kevin, we actually talked a little bit about maybe one other beer, but when I mentioned this particular style, a light went off, and I let him talk because it was an excitement that I also seen in him.
The last time I drank Ungespundet was at Marsbroy.
Yeah, you say that way better.
Pardon?
You say that way better.
Yes, he does.
You can say it again, please.
It'll come out maybe. And they call it OohAhh. So there when you order OohAhh. So and here we got a play on it. It's OohAhh, which is the song lyric. So it's a flip of how you would actually, of the vowels you would pronounce to just simplify ordering Ungespundet basically. And so it's like but when I was there, I was drinking it with local carpenters on like a Wednesday night in mid-November in Bamberg. So it's not tourist season, and they wanted to practice their English, and I wanted to practice my German. And we're hanging out, drinking beer. We drank a few beers at Spezial, then walked down the road, went to Marsbroy and had a few beers there. And it was just, it's a weeknight, so some of the breweries close a little bit earlier. Some breweries are just closed because they have Ruhetag, and that's like the rest day.
So a little history about the beer. Ungespundet Lager in Bamberg, what some people may know in the States is of Keller beer or Zwickel beer. Those beers are usually, they're a little similar all, but different regions do it a little differently. So like Zwickel beer could be what we know here in the United States is more of a golden, light straw colored beer that is naturally not a filtered beer, but has a little lower carbonation and a little bit more hop pronounced, where Ungespundet Lager has a little bit more malt presence to it, but not over the top. When we finally decided on this style, I was like, well, I want to get our partners that we actually both work with in the industry to get involved in this collaboration. So I got to give a big thanks out to Best Malts out of Heidelberg, Germany. Me and Kevin both use those malts. And our supplier that gets them to us, Country Malt Group, they take care of us. I mean, we order a lot. I can tell you, even with Kevin doing 650 to 500 barrels a year, he does a lot with Best Malts, and so do we here at Fretboard. So I asked him, I said, hey, we're doing this beer with Kevin. Oh, we love Kevin. And we love you too, Kevin. So like, yes, we're in. I'm like,
Kevins.
Yeah. So I was like, cool. So they help take care of some of the ingredients for the beer, and you'll see once the beer is released, we gave them some props on the can label. So all in all, it's something I've never done. It's a beer that I've never made before. So, and I've never made it with a guy that has a background like Kevin. And has been able to do what he's been able to do with his farm and his family and Wooly Pig. So he can talk a little bit about more the flavor profile of the beer and what we did and what malts we used.
Yeah, I'd like to know some of the specialty malts. I mean, because this is
kind of embarrassing me. I'm trying not to blush.
But it's a true collab of two breweries plus a malt manufacturer, right? So you got it's a lot of people think it's just going to be the Wooly Fretboard thing.
And the supplier distributor, which is actually a very important part in our world because they got to get it to us.
Yeah, they got to get. So this is truly come from Europe, right?
Yeah, the best malts come out of Europe.
It's in Heidelberg.
Heidelberg, Germany.
Okay.
Like I said, I mean, I've been using Best Malts. I love the quality. Country Malt, they've been great to us, and we've been working with them here for 3 years. We went to Best Malts because they are also trying to push the malt. Kevin's used this malt before. It's a trademark malt through Best Malt called Red X. This beer actually focuses really heavy on Red X.
Is that the only malt you're using?
No, it's a big portion, but it's probably the specialty malt that we're using in the beer, along with best Pilsner malt.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the profile.
Yeah.
So really what it is, we're pushing this beer. It's, in some ways, it's almost like a Märzen kind of. In a little ways, it's maybe it carries some similarities to a Roach beer, like a Nuremberger red lager. It has an approachable maltiness. So, you know, if you think of kind of a fest beer that's not super heavy, like an Oktoberfest beer, and so it's a beer that's going to be very approachable and very drinkable, have a lot of malt character, but not so much that it's going to just wear you out.
Is there a lot of carb to this, or is it low carb?
A little lower carbonation.
As far as carbonation is concerned.
It's slightly lower, but it's still, I mean, it's not a flat beer. Like, you're not going to be like, oh,
It's not, you know, into that level of Pilsner where it's going to be very, you know, bright and crisp. This is going to be a well-balanced beer that's very crushable, easy drinking, and has flavor.
When can we expect it out at Wooly Pig, and how can you get it? And when can we expect it out here in Cincinnati? And how can you get it?
I'll answer mine first, because you know,
yeah.
I would say so. OohAhh Lager will be released here on the 24th of November. It will be canned in 6-packs and also in draft. So
I'm just saying, I need to look at my calendar.
But yeah, like we're brewing it right now, so it's going to be up to the day of packaging, and you'll be able to get it fresh, straight from the bright tank in the cans on the day we're packaging it. So
for us, I don't have a definitive date. You know, I flex things around a little more. We only sell our beer on site, so you're not going to find it anywhere else. And it's a possible we might tap it for the weekend of Thanksgiving, but I'm almost certain we're going to wait till the week after, because that's closer to our anniversary date. So I prefer to have this is basically also doubling as our anniversary beer. And you just celebrated your 3rd anniversary. Congratulations, we're about to celebrate ours. And we will probably be tapping it the week after Thanksgiving.
again, it was an awesome time. I want to thank Kevin for coming down to Fretboard. I know that's what, a 3-hour trip for you.
Yeah, well, it was 3 hours for you up there.
Yeah,
it was the same.
So, but I do want to thank, again, the hospitality he treated all of us and our crew.
Buttermilk.